most magnificent storm phenomenon I ever saw, surpassing in showy grandeur the most imposing effects of clouds, floods, or avalanches, were the peaks of the High Sierra, back of the Yosemite Valley, decorated with snow banners. Many of the starry snow flowers, out of which these banners are made, fall before they are ripe, which most of those do attain perfect development, as six-rayed crystals glint and chafe against one another in their fall through the frosty air and are broken into fragments. This dry depths of the forest, it is rolled over and over, beaten against the rock ridge, and swirled in pits and hollows like boulders and petals, and stand in the potholes or river until finally the delicate angles of the crystals are worn off and the whole mass is reduced to dust. And wherever storm winds find this prepared snow dust in a loose condition on exposed slopes where there is a free upward sweep to leeward, it is tossed back into the sky and borne onward from peak to peak in the form of banners or cloudy drifts, according to the velocity of the wind and the conformation of the slopes up or around which it is driven. While thus flying through the air, a small portion makes good its escape and remains in the sky as vapor. But far the greater part, after being driven into the sky again and again, it is at length locked fast in bossy drifts or in the wombs of glaciers, some of it to remain silent and rigid for centuries before it is finally melted and sent singing down the mountainsides to the sea. Yet, notwithstanding the abundance of winter snow, dust in the mountains, and the frequency of high winds and length of time, the dust remains close, loose, and exposed to their action. The occurrence of well-formed banners is, for causes we shall hereafter note, comparatively rare. I have seen only one display of this kind that seemed in every way perfect. This was in the winter of 1873, when the snow-laden summits were swept by a wild norther. I happened at the time to be wintering in Yosemite, that sublime Sierra temple where every day one may see the grandest sights. Yet even here the wild gala day of the north wind seemed surpassingly glorious. I was wakened in the morning by the rocking of my cabin and the beating of the pine burs on the roof. Detached torrents and avalanches from the main wind flood overhead were rushing wildly down the narrow side canyons and over the precipitous walls with loud resounding roar, rousing the pines to enthusiastic action and making the whole valley vibrate as though it were an instrument being played. But afar on the lofty, exposed peaks of the range, standing so high in the sky, the storm was expressing itself in still grander characters, which I was soon to see in all their glory. I had long been anxious to study some points in the structure of the ice cone that is formed every winter at the foot of the upper Yosemite Fall. But the blinding spray to which it is invested had hitherto prevented me from making a sufficiently near approach. This morning the entire body of the fall was torn into gauzy shreds and blown horizontally along the face of the cliff, leaving the cone dry, and while making my way to the top of an overlooking ledge to seize the so favorable opportunity to examine the interior of the cone, the peaks of the Merced group came in sight over the shoulder of the South Dome, each waving a resplendent banner against the blue sky, as regular in form and as firm in the texture as if woven of fine silk. So rare and splendid a phenomenon, of course, overbore all over considerations, and I at once let the ice cone go and began to force my way out of the valley to some of the or dome or the ridge sufficiently lofty to command a general view of the main summit. Feeling assured that I should go find them bannered still more gloriously, nor was I in the least disappointed. Indian Canyon, though which I climbed, was choked with snow and that had been shot down in avalanches from high cliffs on either side, rendering the ascent difficult, but inspired by the roaring storm, the tedious wallowing brought no fatigue. And in 4 hours I gained the top of the ridge above the valley, 8,000 feet high, and there in bold relief, like a clear painting, appeared a most imposing scene. Innumerable peaks, black and sharp, rose grandly into the dark blue sky, their bases set in solid white, their sides streaked and splashed with snow, like ocean rocks with foam, and from every summit, all free and unconfused, was streaming a beautiful silky silvery banner. From half a mile to a mile in length, slender at the point of attachment, then widening gradually as it extended from the peak until it was about 1,000 or 1,500 feet in breadth. As near as I could estimate, the cluster of peaks at what called the crown of the Sierra, at the head of the Merced and Tuolumne rivers, Mount Dana, Gibbs, Conness, Linau, McClure, Ritter, with their nameless compères, each had its own refulgent banner, waving with a clearly visible notion in the sun glow. And there was not a single cloud in the sky to mar their simple grandeur. Fancy yourself standing on this Yosemite ridge, looking through a sheltered opening in the woods as through a window. There, in immediate foreground of your picture, rises a majestic forest of silver fir blooming in eternal freshness. The foliage yellow-green, and the snow beneath the trees shone with their beautiful plumes, plucked off by wind. Beyond and extending over all the middle ground are somber swaths of pine, interrupted by huge swelling ridges and domes. And just beyond the dark forest you see the monarchs of the High Sierra waving their magnificent banners. They are 20 miles away, but you would not wish them nearer, for every feature is distinct, and the whole glorious show is shown in its right proportion. After this general view, mark how sharply the dark, snowless ribs and buttresses and summits of the peaks are defined, excepting the portions veiled by the banners, and how delicately their sides are streaked with snow. Here it has come to rest in narrow footings and gorges. Mark too how grandly the banners wave as the wind is deflected against their side. Now trimly each is attached to the very summit of the peak like a streamer at a masthead. How smooth and silky they are in texture, and how finely their fading fringes are penciled on the azure sky. See how dense and opaque they are at the point of attachment, and how flimsy and translucent toward the end, so that the peaks back of them are seen dimly, as though you were looking through ground glass. Yet again, observe how some of the longest and belonging to the loftiest summits stream perfectly free all the way across intervening notches and passes from peak to peak, while others overlap and partly hide each other. And consider how keenly every particle of this wondrous cloth of snow is flashing out of jets of lights These are the main features of the beautiful and terrible picture as seen from the forest window. And it would still be surpassingly glorious were the fore and middle grounds obliterated altogether, leaving only black peaks, the white banners, and the blue sky. Glancing now in general way as the formation of the snow banners, we find that the main cause of the wondrous beauty and perfection of those we have been contemplating were the favorable direction and great force of the wind, the abundance of snow dust, and the peculiar conformation of the slopes of the peaks. It is essential not only that the wind should move with great velocity and steadiness to supply a sufficiently copious and continuous stream of snow dust, but it should be come from the north. No perfect banner is ever hung on the Sierra peaks by a south wind. Had the gale that day blown from the south, leaving other conditions unchanged, only a dull, confused fog-like drift would have been produced. For the snow, instead of being sprouted up from over the tops of the peaks in concentrated currents to be drawn out as streamers, would have been shed off around the sides and piled down the glacier wombs. The cause of these concentrated actions of the north wind is found in peculiar form on the north sides of the peaks, where the amphitheaters of the residual glaciers are in general. The south sides are convex and irregular, while the north sides are concave both in the vertical and horizontal sections. The wind in ascending these curves converges towards the summit, carrying the snow in concentrating currents with it, shooting it almost straight up in the air about the peaks. From here, it is then carried away in a north horizontal direction. This difference in form between the north and south sides of the peaks are wholly produced by the difference in the kind and quality of the glaciation to which they have been subjected. The north sides having been hollowed by residual shadow glaciers of a form that never existed on sun-beaten sides. It appears, therefore, that shadows in great part determine not only the form of the lofty icy mountains, but also those of the snow banners that the wild winds hang on them.